This is the Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network on Kerry, Lutz. It's 3/22/21. That means that yesterday we weren't recording. It was 3/21/21 or 3/21/2021. Take your pick. And if you've got a insight into this, numerologically speaking, please send us an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, you know that life is returning back to normal when there are mass arrests of spring breakers taking place in Miami Beach, Florida, my adopted home state, as well as in Fort Lauderdale. And they can't get enough cops, John, to lock these kids up. It's causing mass gridlock throughout the region. I mean, you don't even want to go within 10 miles of South Beach, because if you do, you're going to get caught in a monster traffic jam, and you might as well just park your car and take the bus home or take an Uber, because you're just not going anywhere. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing, John?
Hey, Kerry. Well, it's a normal thing. That's what's amazing about it. That's normal times problems. You know, too many people partying for spring break. That's the stuff that used to happen back before the pandemic. So I think all things considered, it's a good thing because it means we're returning to the life we had before. It's not necessarily a good thing if you're somebody who gets roofied or something, or, you know, run over by all the traffic or whatever. You know, there's lots of bad things that can happen in crowds like that. But from a public policy standpoint, it's incredibly annoying to have your city be shut down. But from a small business standpoint, this is when you make your money in South Florida, right? It's a seasonal, it's not as seasonal as a lot of places, but still, spring break is a time to make a ton of money. And if small businesses in Miami are back to making lots of money, that's a really good thing, no matter what else is going on. So I say net plus overall.
I have to tell you a funny story. In Key West, Florida, they have this thing called Fantasy Fest. And that's where women no longer have to actually wear clothes. They can have them painted on them. And I got in like a taxi driver. This is the week after. I didn't go there for it. No way. I don't want to know about it. And taxi driver said, "You can't believe what happened in Fantasy Fest. They were fornicating in the streets." And I said, "Gee, that's something else." And he said, "Yeah, and this councilman wants to shut it down." I said, "Well, maybe that's not a bad idea." He said, "What? Are you crazy? Do you know how much money I made last week?" That is the attitude here when it comes to partying in Florida. As long as you don't injure people and as long as you allow the traffic to move unconstricted, you pretty much are free to do whatever you want. Drug laws, alcohol laws, sobriety, all of that. Mainly, they don't want you like falling off the sidewalk, getting run over by cars. That's happened before. And they don't want violence. They had fights and stuff. But hey, when alcohol flows freely, you are going to have fights. There's just no two ways about it, John. You know, nothing good ever happens in a bar after 12 p.m.
Well, I mean, the overriding fact of all of this is that drunk people are big tippers. So the locals, you know, within reason, want stuff like this to happen, and cool, you know. Like I said, it's just normal life returning with normal life's problems, and that's so much better than what we've had for the last year. So good, let it happen.
Yeah. Hey, and that brings us to Florida's governor, DeSantis. You know, we're not talking politics here, but we have to compare his handling of the pandemic to Killer Cuomo's handling of the pandemic. And really, New York's got major unemployment. Florida's down under 5%. I mean, they're building, everybody's fleeing here. So you got to kind of contrast the two and say who had the better take on this thing.
You know, the jury's still out, but it's definitely looking like the guys who never shut down are going to be in exactly the same place as the guys that did shut down a little while from now, which means the shutdown was unnecessary. So, you know, we'll see. We have to see how it all plays out and see about these new variants and whether they're a real thing or just made up in order to shut us up and keep us wearing masks or not. And I think within a year we'll know. And my guess is that the Texas-Florida model is going to be the one that everybody wished they'd adopted. So, more power to your state, Kerry. I hope it turns out to be true. And it looks like it is true at the moment.
And remember how DeSantis was berated and Cuomo was held out. This sterling example of leadership. He writes a book, he gets a Grammy Award, and now he's Killer Cuomo. 15,000 people dead in nursing homes, many of them dead because he shipped infected patients back. And let me ask you, did you happen to see the news? Is there anyone who hasn't accused Cuomo of sexual harassment in the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, well, this is following the pattern of really powerful, bad people. Nobody wants to speak out against them, even though in one way or another they've been hurt by the powerful bad person, because they'll get hurt again. Because you don't want to be the only one going up against somebody like Cuomo. But as soon as he's wounded, and you're free to speak your mind, it sounds like people have a lot of things to say about him. So it sounds like he wasn't a very nice guy on a lot of different levels, or isn't a very nice guy on a lot of, see, I'm already speaking about him in the past tense. He's probably gone, but he's not gone yet. But just the nursing home thing would be enough to get most governors thrown out of office. But that's kind of being subsumed by all the news of all the sexual harassment and maybe even sexual assault and stuff like that that a lot of women are coming forward with. So either one of those alone would be enough to end a political career, but you put the two of them together and you end the career and start legal proceedings. Because, the nursing home thing, it seems like kind of a crime, right? I don't know whether you'd call it manslaughter or reckless endangerment or something like that. But, one of those Law and Order TV show terms that they used to throw around a lot, one of those ought to apply to what he did to those people.
Yeah, it's called negligent homicide. I wrote an article about it months ago, 6-7 months ago, entitled "None Dare Call It Murder," because when you act recklessly and expose people to the risk of death and they die, you can be held criminally liable in New York for that. And then they covered it up, so there's just no excuse. So, anyways. Killer Cuomo probably on his way out. I hate that we're just talking about politics, but the one thing we got to talk about is we don't need no stinking masks. I'm in, it's like right by Miami Beach on Saturday night. And the governor specifically said you can't fine anybody for not wearing a mask and you can't do anything to them, businesses as well. And the code enforcer comes up and tells me to put my mask on. And really, I didn't think quickly enough. I would have said, hey, go ahead and write me the ticket. I'm not putting it on. And I'm on the street. I'm not inside. I'm on the street. There's just no proof of any of this outdoor, transmission of COVID. But that doesn't stop them. And even though the governor said they're still harassing people, it's shocking.
Well, you should have gone down to Miami where nobody wears masks now. You could get lost in the crowd of maskless people.
Yeah. But, there was that big stink, that big blowout between Senator Rand Paul and Mr. Dr. Fauci. And it looked to me like Fauci, I think he left a mark. He just told them that wearing masks for people who've been immunized and people who have had COVID, like himself, is just theater. And that caused Fauci to have a meltdown in front of this committee. And, he kept saying to Fauci, hey, just show me a study that says that people can get sick from mutations after they've gotten immunized, after they've been sick. Just show me one. And of course, Fauci couldn't say anything. So instead, he was indignant. So that's kind of been his thing. It's about time somebody called these people out, John.
Yeah. The thing is, this has been such a moving target for so long, with one study coming out saying one thing and one study coming out saying something else, that it's taken a really long time for the science to coalesce around specific things. But it is starting to look like so much of what we did was unnecessary, and the whole mask thing was certainly not as necessary as it seemed to begin with. And 2 masks instead of 1 mask is overkill. All of that stuff is starting to seem true now, based on the stats that are coming out. And I'm afraid we're going to look back on this year as an unnecessary recession, along with all the other pathologies that happened. I mean, childhood mental illness went through the roof, and drug addiction went up, and drug overdoses went up, and spouse abuse went way up. All of this stuff happened maybe unnecessarily. And, that's a tragedy. And the sooner we get past it, the better. But again, I'm not a doctor. I can't say anything definitive about any of this stuff, but that's starting to seem to be what the numbers seem to be saying. And you know what? Better late than never. If we get over this right away, we can minimize the damage going forward, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in other news, stock markets are mixed, but they not have this retrace yet. But there's starting to be divergences, like the Dow Jones on many days starts to lead. We have major declines on Friday, John, and then miraculously, the market just turns itself around. If I didn't know better, I'd think the plunge protection team was back in operation, assuring that we don't have a bloody Friday or a real bad black and blue Friday that turns into a bloody Monday.
Oh, yeah. They're manipulating the markets behind the scenes now, but the other thing they're doing is flooding the system with cash, and the volatility of stocks is going through the roof. I mean, how many 100-point plus Nasdaq days have there been in the past month? 100 points is a fairly notable move for the Nasdaq, but a more typical day now is 200 or 300 points. So there is just an immense amount of money sloshing around out there, and it can leave as quickly as it comes. That's the nature of hot money. So that's why we're seeing up and down days that are so dramatic. And it doesn't look like that's going to change anytime soon, because I guess all the stimulus checks must have gone out by now, most of them. So we've financed the Reddit/Robinhood traders for another round of speculation. And we've given everybody else a lot more money to spend right now, which means the economy is going to show signs of life, and inflation is liable to be higher than maybe we expected, maybe we've seen lately. So, the whole interest rates, inflation, stock prices nexus is going to be volatile going forward. And you can't really say with certainty what direction anything goes, because, there was a time there where everybody was betting on the dollar going down and interest rates going up, but those got to be really crowded trades. So now you could see reversal of those things pretty easily, just for technical reasons, while all this money is sloshing into the system. Same thing with the stock market. We had stocks start to go down for a while and then spike to record levels for a couple of the indices. And we can see them go back down again when the money moves into something else, like moves into bonds because interest rates are going down. So volatility is pretty much all you can talk about with any kind of certainty over the next few weeks or few months. But the imbalances that we're building up pretty much guarantees volatility to the downside for most financial assets in the not too distant future. So, personally, I'm short the Nasdaq, I'm short the S&P 500, but not the Dow yet. And the Dow has been kind of the best performing of the big indexes, because all this new money coming in, a lot of it is flowing into the very biggest companies. So it might be time to short the Dow now too. There won't be much left to short pretty soon as this goes on, as the choppiness at the very top continues.
Yeah, well, 2 things about that. The Dow, the people that buy the Dow stocks are different than the people that buy the Russell 2000 and the tech. Maybe not big tech, the FANG stocks, but those are more defensive investors. It shows that allocation, rotation of funds out of tech, out of Russell 2000, and into cyclicals, consumer cyclicals, and also in the Dow, they're the largest companies in the country, so they're more insulated, if you will, from major market and economic, events. So So the psychology of Wall Street is changing for sure, but it could switch back in a moment's notice, and we'll never know the difference. It'll just be like, all right, the threat's over, let's switch back. But at some point, this party is going to end, and it's not going to end well. Of that, we can be absolutely certain.
Yeah. 5 years ago, we were past the point where there was a pain-free solution to any of this, or 15 years ago. We've been like this for a long time, where there's no fix for it, and the only way to keep it going is to borrow more and more money year after year. But what I don't know how many people get this, but I'll just say it again. But a long period of artificially low interest rates is designed to lead people to borrow more and more money at low interest rates, right? And it works, and people borrow the money and they spend it, and the economy grows. But by doing that, you create this huge section of society that can't tolerate higher interest rates because they've either got adjustable rate mortgages, or they've got prime +1 business loans, or they've got short-term, really cheap debt that they've got to roll over. But if they roll it over at a higher interest rate, that blows up their income statement. It goes on and on like that throughout society and throughout all societies. Every major country is in the same boat. So the longer we keep interest rates at artificially low levels, the more potentially bad debt we build up, and the worse the crisis is when interest rates finally go up, or when that bad debt starts going bad just under the weight of it. Either way, we've created the conditions for a monster crisis. This is just going to be immense when it comes, and they're doing their best to keep it from coming. But if interest rates go up because inflation goes up, because the economy is growing strongly, because so much more money has been pumped into it, well, there's not a fix for that. And that's the situation we're headed to, where you can't fix rising interest rates with more money, because that exacerbates inflation, which makes interest rates go up even more. And once we're there, it's game over. And, we could easily have gotten there in the last month when the 10-year Treasury yield jumped up above 1.5. But in the next upcycle for interest rates, let it go up above 2, and then you're in serious danger zone there. That could be the thing that does it. And if not that, then 2.5. We're close to the number that blows up this system. And we won't know what it is until after the fact, but we're getting there, and when it happens, there's going to be bankruptcies everywhere you look. It's going to be just amazing. And I don't think the Dow companies are spared from that, because a lot of people, like you said, Kerry, have been using those stocks as safe havens. But, they're subject to higher interest rates too, or vulnerable to higher interest rates. So let that happen, and even the big companies will really suffer. You'll see stocks go down across the board, with a very few exceptions. And I don't even think gold and silver stocks will be the exceptions if something like this happens, because they'll follow along with everything else. Which is really, I think, the big question for gold bugs is, how do you protect yourself from, rising inflation is good for you, but rising interest rates are bad for you. So if rising inflation causes rising interest rates, what do you do? And that's the big challenge. You may want to take some profits out of your mining stocks and hold some cash to be ready to pick things up when they get really cheap.
Yep, not a bad idea at all. You just need to be ready. That's the key, right? I mean, that's really what it's about. Be prepared, because when it happens, no one's going to be shocked by it, although everyone will pretend to be. But you heard it from so many places. Just read zerohedge.com for a day, and I think you get a really good understanding of what's going on. In any event, make sure you go over to John's site, dollarcollapse.com, subscribe to his newsletter. You could do that at ours too, at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. We will pick up where we left off next week, John, and hopefully Miami will be back to normal, meaning at least the state of emergency will be over, and the party revelers will hopefully have cooler heads, or they'll leave, and then the next group will be in, because it's like a never-ending thing for like all of March and April, spring break, because you got private schools, you got high schools, you got colleges, all these things. I wouldn't let my kids go to Miami for spring break, I'll tell you that.
um, yeah, I guess I would be worried too. But on the other hand, it would be hard to say no, because I did stuff like that back in the day, and that's one of the parenting things that you bump into, is where if you try to tell your kid not to do something that you did, are you a hypocrite or a liar or something else? So I don't know. It's a tough one. There are lots of hard questions out there in the world.
Tough one. All right. Hey, if you got any questions for John, send us an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. We'll forward it off to him. We had a couple of questions, John. I forgot them today. We'll get to them next week. In any event, that's it for now, and we'll talk to you next Monday, John.
All right. See you, Kerry.
Now more than ever, the Financial Survival Network.